This video is the conclusion of Comenius Plants Part 2 Potherbs. Orbis sensualium pictus, olera, lacana. In hortis nascuntur olera, in tois cepois genatae lacana. Ut brassica, hos crambe erec herapanos, rapum vel rapa, gongulis e gongule, raphanus minor, herapanis, raphanus major vel armorachia, agria rapanis, cicer, ciceron e elapoboscon, petroselinum, petroselinon. You'll recall from the sentence in the Yanawa that Dioscorides gave the name petroselinon to parsley. Lactuca, thridax kai thridacine, cepa, chromuon, aleum, scorodon, each with alternate spellings. Onion and garlic, along with scallion, shallot, leek, and chives, are closely related species of Linnaeus's Aleum genus. My late father-in-law, who was Italian, frequently but always unsuccessfully tried to get me to eat garlic when I had a cold. I never had much use for onions and garlic except to make people cry and to ward off vampires. But my father-in-law would have been delighted to learn from his ancestor Pliny that the Egyptians counted garlic and onions among the deities in whose name they swore oaths. Aleum cepasque inter deos in jure jurando habet Aegyptus. Onion and garlic belong to the Aloideae subfamily of the Amaryllidaceae family. Most genera in the Amaryllidaceae family, including the Amaryllis and the Aleum, are bulbous flowering plants. The Amaryllidaceae family and the Asparagaceae family, with which you are familiar from the Yanawa, belong to the order of monocotyledons called the Asparagales. Amaryllis. Isn't that a pretty name? Doesn't this poetic-sounding namesake of our Amaryllidaceae family somehow evoke something very different from onions and garlic, especially when combined with belladonna? In his 1737 inventory of plants in the famous Dutch gardens of the Amsterdam banker George Clifford, Linnaeus identified 4 species of a plant heretofore named by botanists Lilionarcissus. Because of its beautiful flowers, the second of the species, brought over from the West Indies, was also sometimes called belladonna. Linnaeus concludes, Lilio narcissus vocabulum est consarcenatum, quod reicio. Lilio narcissus is a stitched-together name, which I reject. Flores huius generis eximei sunt, nescio dum secunda param habeat, hinc bellae donae dictae plures. The flowers of this genus are extraordinary. I don't know if the second species has an equal. Hence many of them are called belladonnae. Belladonna virgilii amaryllis dicta nomine transit in proverbium de omni grata. The name of the belladonna of Virgil, amaryllis, has become proverbial for everything pleasing. Et de secunda specie apud hortulanos quosdam, quae cum et radice amara sit, pro amarella amaryllis dicatur. And so concerning the second species found in certain of the gardens, since it also has a bitter root, instead of little bitter, let it be called amaryllis. The nymph or shepherdess amaryllis appears in several of Virgil's eclogues, including at the very beginning of Eclogue 1. Titura tu patulae recubans subtegmene fagae silvestrem tenui musam meditaris avena. Nos patrae finis et dulcia linquemus arva, nos pater am fugimus, tu titura lentus in umbra, formosam resonare doces amarillida silvas. You, Tityrus, at ease in the shade, teach the woods to echo the words fair Amaryllis. But we must tear ourselves away from our pastoral reverie and return to the reality of Amaryllis's stinking relations, the onion and garlic. Cucurbita, sicua, e colocunta edodemos, e colocunte. Cucumeres, sicues. For our final taste of garden plants, Comenius samples the world of cucurbits, gourds, cucumbers, melons, squashes, and pumpkins. Here they are in Bohine: cucumis, melo, pepo, anguria, cucurbita, colocinthus. Cucurbita in Pliny, he sicua in Theophrastus, colocintha edodimos in Dioscorides, is the Lagenaria siceraria, the bottle gourd. Colocynte in Theophrastus is also a gourd, though Hort's identification as the Cucurbita maxima is erroneous. The assertion of Pliny's Loeb editor that Cucurbita in the Naturalis Historia is also sometimes the Cucurbita maxima is likewise erroneous, since the Cucurbita maxima is of South American origin. In turn, the Lagenaria vulgaris or siceraria is thought to be one of the first plant species to be domesticated for human use. It originated in Africa, and one of its mysteries is how it found its way to the New World, waiting there for Columbus. Our genus name Lagenaria comes from a Greek and Roman word for a large earthenware vessel used mostly to store wine, and indeed the bottle gourd, while used for food and medicine, was also sometimes hollowed out and used for storage. The Greek word for the cucumber is he sicus, not to be confused with he sicua for the bottle gourd. Furthermore, he sicus has a masculine variant ho sicuos or sicuos. Also, there's some reason to believe the Greeks distinguished between unripe cucumber ho sicuos and ripened cucumber sicuos pepon, almost as if they were separate plants. For example, in the case history of the kidney disease of one Clonigus of Abdera in Epidemics 7 of the Hippocratic Corpus, the author recounts this diet: Hesperende artos exoptos, opsa, seltla e sicuos, oinos melas leptos, edidotode kai sicuos pepon. And in the evening he was given roasted bread, a main dish, beets or cucumber, thin red wine, and he was also given ripe cucumber. For medicinal reasons, among others, the Greeks were sharp observers of the different textures and skins of fruits, as Theophrastus when discussing the plant part fruit in his book 1. Hoi carpoi mengar exarchos kai inos, hoide exarchos monon, hoide kai ekdermatos synketai. Exarchos men kai inos, hoton kokumelon kai sicuon. Some fruits consist of flesh and fiber, some of flesh alone, and some of skin also, that is, rind. Now, fruit made of flesh and fiber includes that of plums and of cucumbers. Compare Pliny: Alaorum fructus in terra est, alaorum et extra, alaorum non nisi extra. Some plants produce their fruits in the earth, others outside as well, others only outside. Quaedam jacent crescunque, ut cucurbita et cucumis. Some grow lying on the ground, for instance, gourds and cucumbers. Eadem pendent quamquam graviora multo etiam iis quae in arboribus gignuntur. These also grow in a hanging position, that is, on vines, though they are much heavier even than fruits that grow on trees. Sed cucumis cartilagine et carne constat, cucurbita corticae et cartilaginae. But the cucumber is composed of cartilage and flesh, and the gourd of rind and cartilage. In fact, Pliny asserts cortex huic uni maturitate transit in lignum. The gourd is the only fruit whose rind, when ripe, changes into a woody substance. Pepones. Greek pepones, maybe? Speaking of fruit skins, pepones in Comenius could be watermelons, or Citrullus lanatus, the woolly citrullus. Citrullus is a medieval Latin word from classical Latin citrus, possibly because the watermelon resembled a citrus fruit. Pepones in Comenius could also be pompions, or cucurbita pepo. Pompion is an older English word for pumpkin. Pompion indeed derives from French pompon, which derives from pepo, peponus, as well as Greek pepon, peponos. Charles Houle, in the Latin-English edition of the Orbis Pictus, translated pepones as pompions, and my wife believes the distinctly ribbed melon in the woodcut illustration in the Orbis Pictus resembles the pumpkin more than the watermelon. The Loeb edition of Pliny translates pepones as pumpkins, but its index of plants says perhaps the watermelon. I hate to decide because I love watermelon in the summer and jack-o'-lanterns and pumpkin pie for the winter holidays. Or maybe I don't have to decide. Maybe Comenius's pepones comprehend both. Notice how at the end of this sentence in the Orbis, Comenius switches to the plural, cucumeres and pepones. According to Pliny, pepones were cucumeres that had ripened into exceedingly large fruits. But in Comenius's time, the pepo was a class of melon with multiple species of its own, as we saw in Boheme, and, for example, in Rombert Dodoens, who wrote in 1583 De Pepone, Peponum aliquot reperiuntur species, vel magnitudine, vel forma differentes. A number of species of pepones have been discovered that are different in size and shape. On the number of species, see what Boheme said about cucurbitae, cucurbitarum species proprae infinitae sunt. Regarding names, Dodoens says, Graecis pepon, Latinis similiter pepo. But Dodoens was very familiar with the ancient Greek sources and was well aware of an issue some later Greeks had with the use of pepones. Pepones autem omnes fructus perfecti ac maturi communi nomine dicuntur, unde medici quidam inquit Galenus fructum hunc sicuon pepona nominare oportera contenderunt. However, all fruits, when fully matured, are called pepones. Hence certain physicians, Galen says, contended that this fruit should be called sicuon pepona. We'll return to this. To wrap up on the nomenclature, Plinius cucumeres inquit cum magnitudine excessera pepones vocantur. The English Herbal or General History of Plants translated this section of Dodoens under the heading of melons or pompions. The great melon or pompion, and I'm sorry, but this reminds me of Linus and the Great Pumpkin. The great melon or pompion is named in Greek pepon, in Latin likewise pepo, etc. Not only was pepo now a distinct genus, pepo went on to achieve the further status of being an official fleshy fruit type in modern botany, in fact, the fruit type of the Cucurbitaceae family. Remember our introduction to fruit types in our videos on trees. The fruit type pepo is characterized inter alia as non-septate. There are no grapefruit-like segments or locules, as you know when you carve the pumpkin or slice the watermelon. Now what about those disputatious Greeks? We saw before that at some point in their earlier history, in fact before they had the misfortune of getting to know the Romans, the Greeks apparently distinguished between the unripe cucumber, the sicuos, and the ripe cucumber, the sicuos pepon, as suggested in this case history from the Hippocratic Corpus. Pepon, by the way, according to Liddell and Scott, meant not just ripe, but more particularly cooked by the sun and therefore ripe. If we advance a few centuries, what do we find in Dioscorides? He calls the cucumber Siccus hemeros. After enumerating the medicinal properties of this plant, its seeds and its leaves, he continues, he de tu peponos sarx kai aute peptike, and the flesh of the pepon is itself also digestive, etc. Notice that while Siccus is feminine, tu peponos is masculine. So this is probably the old name Siccuos pepon reduced to the substantive abbreviation ho pepon, apparently in Dioscorides' eyes very closely related to, but nevertheless distinct from his Siccus hemeros. But how we should interpret tu peponos here is unclear. Notice the Teubner editor does a paragraph break, and some earlier editors treated pepon as a separate chapter, that is, as a separate plant. But if we advance yet another century, we have unambiguous statements from two quite dissimilar camps, physicians and grammarians, about the linguistic state of affairs. Let's first look at the statement of Galen Dodoens referenced, which we find in Galen's book on the medicinal properties of foods, De Alimentorum Facultatibus, De Peponibus. After discussing the medicinal effect of pepones, he adds, Prodelon de hoti capi tu carpu ten pros egorian hoi anthropoi pepoentai katsaper epi tu grapicu melanos. And it is quite clear that men, in naming this fruit, have done the same thing as they did with black ink. In other words, they had come to call black ink simply the black to melon. Hegar toi pepon pone to hoion peponon ek decnutai tut esti to pepemenon hoper huparche kai tois alois hosa pepainetai. For the word pepon signifies, to paraphrase, anything that is ripened. He gives several examples, and then holds up the example of the compound word melopepon. Katsaper ho melopepon en he autoi perilabon ton pepona eke, just as the word melopepon contains within it the pepon. Hoten enioi ton iatron ude haplos exiosan onomasden tus peponas al holon tu topasin krenai legastai siccuo pepon. Whence some of our physicians have wished not to simply call these peponas, but they say they should be called by the whole word siccuo pepon. Galen, however, declines this advice, arguing that his presentation will be better understood when he employs the language people actually use, and he evidently followed his own advice. For example, in his pharmacological work on the compounding of medicines by places, he prescribes quite a few concoctions to make plasters for ailing eyes, including artos, cataros, kekamenos, miges, e peponos, e siccuu te sarki. Use pure bread mixed with the flesh of pepon or siccuos. The second camp of those objecting to this linguistic imprecision was the school of Greek grammarians of the Roman and Byzantine empires known as Atticists. The Atticists' goal was to restore the Greek language to the purity of the classical Athenian authors such as Plato, Demosthenes, and Aeschines. This goal was articulated by one such Atticist from the 2nd century CE known as Phrynichus. Phrynichus wrote this epigram for his collection of Attic words, the Ekloge. Hostis archaios kai dokimos etele dialegestai tad autoi pulactea. Whoever wants to converse in the old and proper way, let him observe the following specific usages. And usage number 230 in the collection was to avoid misusing pepon. Pepon. Tuto kat hauto uk orthos tithemenon horoi. Semane gar to onoma pan to en pepanse on. Pepon. I observe this being used incorrectly as a standalone word. for this word signifies all things that are in a state of ripeness. Titheasi dauto oikeos epiton sikuon, kreun huto legen hos hokratinos sikuon spermatian, eteles pepona sikuon, kathauto dato pepon epitu autu metite. But they normally use it with reference to cucumbers. Therefore, you should say it as the Athenian comic poet Cratinus did, sikuon spermatian, or if you wish, pepona sikuon, but don't use pepon by itself. Evidently, Phrynicus felt strongly about this because he repeated the stricture in a fragment we have of another of his works, Sophistic Preparation, Sophistiques Paraskeles. Sikuos spermatias hon hoipoloi pepona uk orthos legusi. Togar pepon katapanton peratai ton es pepsem tasanton. Sikuos spermatias, which the masses incorrectly call pepona, for the word pepon is applied to all plants that have passed into a state of ripeness. The evidence suggests, though, that the hoi polloi prevailed. From the book of Numbers, in the Septuagint version of the Old Testament, Emnestimen tus ictuas, hus estiomen en Aegyptoi doraan, kai tus sikuas, kai tus peponas, kai ta prasa, kai ta chromua, kai ta scorda. We remember, complained the ungrateful people of Israel being led out of Egypt by the Lord, the fish we ate in Egypt for free, the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic. And in the Latin Vulgate, recordamur piscium quos comedebamus in Aegypto gratis, in mentem nobis veniunt cucumeres et pepones, porique et cepae et alaa. Comenius' Greek translator translated Comenius' Latin pepones with standalone Greek pepones. We questioned that, but let's marshal our evidence. Clearly over the centuries, regular Greek folk had come to use pepones as a standalone substantive, despite the later objections of some physicians and grammarians. In fact, this is probably where the Romans got their pepones from. Now, I don't like the language police then or now. In fact, in the early 19th century, around the time of the Greek liberation from Turkish rule, a political movement arose in Greece to make an imitation of ancient Greek called katharevousa the official language of the Greek nation. They advocated for its use in all government documents and in the educational system instead of the language people actually spoke, called demotiki. This language question, which the Greeks called to glossikos detema, dragged on for over a century and reached an ugly conclusion when katharevousa became closely associated with the military coup and reactionary regime of the colonels from 1967 to 1974. Finally, the newly restored democracy passed a law in 1976 to make modern Greek the exclusive language of the educational system as it is today. So I hereby side with the hoi polloi of then and now and pronounce standalone Greek pepones as the authorized Greek translation of Comenius' pepones. But after all that, we have still begged the question which plant was designated by this name. In antiquity, the cucumber itself, or a plant very closely associated with the cucumber, to the point where Cucumis pepo and Sicus pepon sometimes appear almost as a hendiades. Cucumeres cum magnitudine excessera pepones vocantur. Sicus hemeros cae hetu peponos sarx. Miges e peponos e sicuu te sarci. Titheasi pepon oikeos epiton sicuon. Emnestimen cae tus sicuas cae tus peponas. Botanists had by Comenius' time made pepo a separate genus distinct from the cucumber, each with its own set of species. In Comenius' mind, did pepones include the watermelon as well as its linguistic heir, the Pompion, as Pliny's Loeb editor suggests may have been the case even in Pliny? You decide. Comenius's Cucurbita, Cucumeres, and Pepones belong to different genera of our Cucurbitaceae family, known as the cucumber, gourd, melon, or squash family. Let's reprise the sentence. In hortis nascunter olera, ut brassica, rapum vel rapa, Raphanus minor, Raphanus major vel armorachia, Cicer petroselinum, lactuca, cepa, alaum, cucurbita, cucumeres, pepones. In tois cepois genatai lacana, hos crambe, erec he rapanos, gongulis e gongule, rapanis, agria rapanis, Ciceron e elapoboscon, petroselinon, thridax kai thridacine, chromuon, scorodon, sicua, sicues, pepones. Bon appetit!